Aisle 4 of the local market. A pistol was aimed squarely at my chest. The cop, a kid barely out of his teens, was accusing me of casing the joint. He had no idea he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life by threatening one of the men who wrote the rulebook he was breaking. "Hands up, where I can see them," the officer ordered, his voice cracking with a mix of adrenaline and arrogance. The command cut through the quiet Saturday afternoon buzz. Fluorescent lights glinted off the barrel of his Glock. I am Elias Cole, and for a split second, I was just a man buying groceries. Then the training kicked in. I felt a familiar, cold calm settle over the rage building in my chest as I slowly raised my hands. "There's no need for this, officer," I said, my voice even, betraying none of the fury inside me. The cop's name tag read Miller. He was young with a flushed, angry face, puffed up with the kind of authority that only comes from a badge and a gun. "No need?" he sneered, shoving himself closer. "I don't think so. You fit the profile perfectly." "What profile is that?" I asked, my eyes locked on his. A smug, ugly smirk spread across his lips. "The one that says you don't belong here. I've been watching you, lurking. I know your type." His type. The insult was so blatant, so steeped in prejudice, it felt like a physical blow. Me, a senior agent with 2 decades in the Bureau, being profiled as a common thug by some power-tripping patrolman. The humiliation was sharp and bitter. To understand the insult, you have to understand the man he was threatening. I'd spent my entire career hunting the worst of the worst. Terror cells, organized crime syndicates, the kind of monsters Officer Miller only saw in movies. I wasn't the man he expected to find in the quiet suburbs of Oak Ridge. I was disciplined, respected, and I moved with the quiet confidence that comes from staring down true evil. And I had earned my place in this town. I grew up on the other side of the tracks here, in a neighborhood where the American dream felt a million miles away. I'd fought my way out, pouring every ounce of myself into my education and then the Federal Academy, driven to escape the low expectations this very town had set for me. My entire life was built on a foundation of evidence, integrity, and facts. And this cop was reducing all of it to the color of my skin. What made it worse was Rob O'Connell, the town's chief of police. We grew up on these streets together, shooting hoops in the same parks. I left for D.C., and he joined the local force, climbing the ladder. We were still close, a bond forged over a lifetime. Rob knew exactly who I was. But on this Saturday, I was just a husband in jeans and a button-down, trying to remember what kind of bread my wife wanted. And Officer Chad Miller, barely a year on the force, had decided I was a threat. He saw a black man in his pristine, quiet suburb, and his poisoned mind saw a criminal. He didn't see a father, a husband, or a federal agent. He saw a problem that needed to be handled with force. He had marched up to me, his posture aggressive. "You! Stop right there!" he'd barked. I had turned from the cereal boxes, startled. "Is there a problem, officer?" "What's your business in this store?" Miller demanded, his eyes raking over me with suspicion. "I'm buying groceries," I replied, my annoyance growing. "You look like you're up to something," he spat, the disgust clear in his voice. "I saw you pacing the aisles." "I was deciding on cereal," I said, my jaw tightening. "I live in Oak Ridge. This is my neighborhood." "Cut the crap," Miller snarled. "You don't look like you're from around here. Where are you really from?" The mask was off. This was pure, uncut discrimination. "I live on Sycamore Lane," I said, my voice taking on a hard edge. My patience was gone. "Let me see some ID." "Now!" he demanded, his hand dropping to his holstered weapon. "And why would I do that?" I countered, my knowledge of procedure kicking in automatically. "You have no reasonable suspicion to demand my identification. I haven't committed a crime." My calm, legal response was like throwing gasoline on a fire. To Miller, a citizen knowing his rights was a direct challenge to his authority. His face turned a blotchy, furious red. "Are you obstructing my investigation?" he shouted, his voice pitching higher. "I have every right to identify suspicious individuals, and you, pal, are suspicious as hell." He stepped forward, closing the distance until we were inches apart. "I'm not obstructing anything," I said, my voice dropping to a low, controlled tone. The years of training took over completely, encasing the rage in ice. I looked into Miller's eyes and saw it all. The panic, the arrogance, and the ugly racism looking for an excuse to explode. "Hands up! Get your hands up now!" Miller bellowed, his voice trembling with a chaotic mix of fury and fear. He ripped the pistol from his holster. He leveled it directly at my heart. The sharp, metallic click echoed in the suddenly silent aisle. Other shoppers froze, their eyes wide with disbelief. The humiliation washed over me, a physical weight pressing me down. But underneath it, a diamond-hard resolve formed. This punk, this bigot in a uniform, had just crossed a line he could never uncross. My mind raced, cycling through options with the speed of a field agent. Engage him physically? That's suicide. Try to reason with him? He's too far gone. Flash my FBI credentials? He was so keyed up he might see the wallet as a weapon and fire. There was only one play left. A move Miller would never see coming. A move designed not just to end the confrontation, but to utterly detonate the young officer's career. I had to call Rob. With my hands still raised high, my voice became unnervingly calm. "Officer," I said, my words deliberate and sharp, "you are making a career-ending mistake. I suggest you lower your weapon." Miller let out a short, ugly bark of a laugh. "You're not in a position to suggest a damn thing. Who the hell do you think you are?" "I want to speak to your commanding officer," I stated flatly. "Get me your chief of police." The mockery on his face deepened. "The chief? You think that's gonna scare me? What, is he your pal?" "That's exactly right," I said, my gaze drilling into his. "His name is Rob O'Connell, and when his oldest friend tells him one of his officers pulled a gun on him in the cereal aisle, he is going to lose his mind." The name Rob O'Connell hit Miller like a taser. The angry red drained from his face, leaving a pasty, sick-looking white. He knew the chief's reputation for fierce, absolute loyalty. Doubt, then raw, primal fear flickered in his eyes. You're lying," he stammered. But the bravado was gone. His voice was a panicked whisper. "Am I?" I asked softly. I moved with calculated slowness, lowering my right hand directly into his line of sight. I pulled my cell phone from my jacket. "I'm calling him right now. You can explain the situation to him yourself." Miller was paralyzed. His gun was still aimed at me, but his arm had begun to tremble violently. The horrifying possibility that this was real bloomed on his face. He watched, frozen, as I unlocked the phone, hit a single favorite contact, and put it on speaker. The ringing of the phone was the only sound in the suffocating silence. "Elias, everything okay?" Chief O'Connell's voice came through the speaker, clear and familiar. "Rob," I said, my own voice tight with controlled fury. "I'm at the local market, aisle 4. I'm having a problem with one of your officers." "A problem? What kind of problem?" Rob's tone sharpened instantly. My eyes bored into Miller, who looked like he'd just seen a ghost. "Officer Chad Miller," I said, letting the name hang in the air like a death sentence. "He decided I looked suspicious while shopping. He's been harassing me, and now he has his service weapon pointed at my chest. Apparently buying cereal while black is now a felony in Oak Ridge." Dead silence on the other end. For a full 5 seconds, nothing. Then Rob's voice came back, low and vibrating with a cold rage I'd only heard a handful of times in 30 years. "He has a gun on you? For shopping? Elias, don't you move. Don't even breathe. I'm on my way. Right. Now." I ended the call and slipped the phone back into my pocket. I stared at Officer Miller. His face was slick with sweat, his complexion a sickly gray. He had heard every word. The man he'd just threatened had a direct line to the one person who could destroy his life. You actually know the chief," Miller croaked. "I told you I did," I replied, my voice like ice. "And he's coming. I imagine you have a lot to answer for." The terror in the young officer's eyes was absolute. The catastrophic weight of his actions finally crashed down on him. His hand trembled so violently he could barely control it as he slowly, shakily, lowered his pistol. He began to babble, a pathetic stream of apologies. "Sir, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear to God, I had no idea." It wasn't remorse. It was the panicked squeal of a coward watching his career circle the drain. Less than 5 minutes later, an unmarked sedan screeched to a halt outside. Chief Rob O'Connell got out, not in uniform, but radiating an aura of command that was unmistakable. He stormed through the doors, his eyes scanning the aisles until he found us. He saw me, tense and rigid, and he saw Officer Miller, pale and shaking, gun now hanging limply in his fist. A thundercloud of fury settled on the chief's face. He strode directly to me, ignoring Miller completely. "Elias, are you all right? Did he touch you?" "I'm fine, Rob," I said, though the humiliation still burned. "No physical harm done. Just a lecture on how I don't belong in my own neighborhood and a gun in my face." Rob's head snapped toward Miller. His gaze was glacial. "Officer Miller," he began, his voice dangerously low, "what in God's name do you think you're doing with your weapon drawn on a civilian?" He paused, letting the question hang in the air before delivering the final, devastating blow. "On FBI Special Agent Elias Cole?" "FBI Special Agent?" If it was possible, Miller turned even whiter. His world tilted on its axis. Not just the chief's best friend, a federal agent. Every racist assumption, every ounce of his smug authority evaporated into pure, cold dread. "Agent," Miller choked out, his eyes darting between the furious chief and the stone-faced man he had just threatened. "Chief, I didn't know. I swear, you didn't know?" Rob O'Connell cut him off, his voice laced with pure contempt. "Or you didn't care. You saw a black man in a nice neighborhood, and you made a choice. You chose to harass an innocent citizen. You chose to threaten my best friend. You chose to draw your weapon on a federal agent." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming the terrified officer. "Give me your weapon, now, then your badge and your radio." His voice dropped to an ice-cold growl. "Report to the station, my office. You are suspended, effective immediately." Shaking uncontrollably, Miller fumbled his pistol back into its holster. He unclipped his badge and radio, his hands trembling so badly he almost dropped them on the linoleum floor. He handed them over to the chief, his face a pathetic mess of sweat and tears. "Chief, I'm sorry. Agent Cole, please. I made a terrible mistake." I just stared back at him. My expression was a blank mask. My silence was more damning than any words could be. I didn't want an apology born from the fear of consequences. O'Connell gestured to two uniformed officers who had just arrived. "Escort him out." Miller stumbled away between them, a broken man, still muttering apologies as he was led from the store. When he was gone, Rob let out a long, heavy breath. The anger on his face was replaced by deep shame and exhaustion. "Elias, I am so sorry. I can't even find the words for one of my own men to do this. To you, of all people." "This isn't on you, Rob," I said, though the humiliation still burned in my gut. "But you've got a sickness in your department. This happened to me because I could call you. What happens to the people who can't?" Rob's face hardened, his expression grim. "I hear you, Elias, loud and clear. That poison has no place in my police force. I'm cutting it out, starting right now." Back at headquarters, the gears of justice turned with blinding speed. Chief O'Connell handed the case personally to his most feared internal affairs captain with a simple two-word directive: no mercy. The investigation was swift and brutal. I provided a calm, precise, and utterly damning written statement detailing every condescending word and the final, reckless act of drawing a weapon without cause. In his interview, Miller completely fell apart. He was a sweating, desperate mess, trying to spin a fantasy where he was the victim. He claimed I was acting evasive and that he feared for his life when I reached for my phone. A blatant lie the call log and timeline immediately dismantled. But the final nail in his coffin was the high-definition security footage from the local market. From 4 different angles, the video was irrefutable. It showed Miller's predatory, aggressive approach. It showed my calm, non-threatening posture. It showed the exact moment he drew his gun on a man who was simply standing still with his hands up. And it showed the instant panic collapse of his authority the second he heard the chief's voice on the phone. It was an undeniable frame-by-frame record of gross misconduct and racial profiling. The IA report was a career execution order. It listed a dozen violations, from abuse of authority and unlawful detention to dereliction of duty. The recommendation wasn't just termination, it was a referral to the district attorney for criminal charges. The disciplinary hearing was a formality. It was the final stage for the public humiliation of Chad Miller. He sat there next to a union lawyer, his face ashen, as the crystal-clear video evidence played for the board. His lawyer bleated about youth and a stressful mistake, but Chief O'Connell, presiding over the hearing, slammed his hand on the table. "He created the stress." Rob's voice boomed in the silent room. He created the confrontation. He chose to escalate a threat that existed only in his own prejudiced mind. The board's decision was unanimous. Chief O'Connell looked directly at Miller, his eyes filled with cold, final disgust. He didn't read from a piece of paper. He delivered the verdict from memory. Officer Chad Miller, your actions were a disgrace to this uniform. Your employment with the Oak Ridge Police Department is terminated, effective immediately. Miller sat there, a hollowed-out shell. It was over. But Rob wasn't finished. Two stone-faced IA officers approached the table. One placed a single form in front of Miller. "You will sign this resignation now," O'Connell commanded, "or we will proceed with a criminal prosecution for aggravated assault and official misconduct. The choice is yours." With a hand that shook so violently he could barely grip the pen, Miller signed his career away. The second officer then slid a clear plastic bag across the table. "Your locker has been cleared out," the officer stated flatly. "You will be escorted from the building. You are not to set foot on this property ever again." The finality was absolute. The justice was swift and deeply satisfying. For me, it was a painful reminder of a fight that was far from over. But seeing the system I believed in work, watching a corrupt officer be so completely stripped of his power, provided a profound and undeniable sense of closure. I hadn't just stood up for myself. I had ensured that Chad Miller would never again get to terrorize another citizen for the color of their skin.